Homai te paki I know it's the first time I've been on stage and I almost jumped up. Yeah. What I will propose to do this morning is sort of do my journey as a PhD, I don't know the terminology, candidate, on my journey of working through this discovery of, chosen a few words from my mentor, Graham Smith, overcoming the tyranny of distance and separation. Still haven't figured out what that means, but I think it's sort of something like being separated from my whenua at home. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that whakatoa here is in the house, Danny and the Whānau. Yeah, big ups. Big ups to my whakatoa here, Whānau here. You're privileged to be part and parcel of a group that I didn't actually know what AI was or what IT was, but it was pretty sexy in the sounding. And coming from a social science perspective, knowing what Judith Collins was going to do a couple of months ago and sort of take all the money away from social scientists, I decided to put AI into the terminology, because then I sort of sat within that scientific world and was able to get some more putea for my whānau to carry on with the conversations. However, we're not siloed. The things that we were able to do with my family is to identify tikanga and mātauranga Māori, that if some technical person might be able to create a IT artifact or an artificial intelligence, then these values probably need to be considered to be enshrined into that artifact. And we're pretty sure that then the well-being of our whānau is going to be okay. So the other major difference that we did as well is that so much work has been done on data that we made a profound statement that if we could create the engine, or if we could create the artifact, then we would have more control in the well-being of what the data was going to do. Got the engine, got the data, the outcome is going to be better for us as Māori. So that's sort of the long story short, but firstly, just acknowledgements. That's my, I got a story to tell. That's my mum on the top up there, and she's sitting with our little moko. And you will see that I am dressed accordingly. My shorts. I was working with that little baby girl and packing my bag to come along. And I said to her, okay, here's my good shirt, can you put it in my bag? She takes it and puts it in my bag. And I said, oh, can you get my trousers and put it in my bag? Put my trousers into her bag. So at present, JD girl has got my trousers, my socks in her bag. But yeah, it's about that intergenerational connection, yeah? So that's just a little story about why I'm standing up here, blessed with those sort of fine whakatoa hair muscles. Anyway, back on track. Huge acknowledgements and shout out to the Tint Project. If it wasn't for Tint Project, the financial requirements in regards to going through this journey wouldn't have been met. So advice in regards to going into the PhD journey: start early in your investigations of the things that you need to find out. Firstly, one, what's the environment you're working in? I started at Waikato University and I was blessed and privileged to be around Te Taka and Himi Whanga and cousin Dudu Maxwell. Bless him. I was hoping he was going to be here and he could come and do the kōrero for me, but having that grounded knowledge of how to work a PhD is just so important. Also, the funding. What funding aspects are available for us? I could never have done this without the Tint, Tikanga technology, finding funding, looking at the mechanisms and the bureaucracies that we've got to get through within this institute. So those are just a couple of things that acknowledgement for Tint for helping out with that financial financial considerations. But the big why are the two pictures on the top and the bottom of my moko, my mum, all coming from my whānau, Raikete and Patu Moana Omomo. On those three over there, it's a pretty good picture too. All right, research questions, really important within the creation of that PhD. The questions actually change over the period of time. This wasn't my original set of questions. It was pretty tata close, but the fact about it is, as we walked through the journey, things started to change. So, looking at mātauranga and tikanga Māori, and whether they're able to impact the cultural well-being for my whānau in the futures. Nothing about AI at this stage. I got all the AI photos in there, but we were doing general, that's because, yeah, sexy. But we discovered that the things that we do naturally, well, anyway, that's coming up in the story. Number 2, one of the things that I worked on heavily during my time as a school teacher was distance learning. My master's was around a framework of Zoom technology. I can remember, thank goodness I can remember, back to, we ran a project called Computers and Technology for Teachers. And being able to work within an environment of online was something that was coming up really quickly. And there's not many things that I thank COVID about, but one of them was the intrusion of the need for online teaching and learning. So that was my second question. And the third question, which is one of the things that's being spoken about heavily today, is that globalness. How can my whānau's conversations be part or impact the global conversations that are going on? Now, the major difference between our conversations is it started at whānau level. 103 of us are in the straight line of my nanapa and my nanny. So from that 103, we don't have a large family, but how can our conversation be part of a global conversation? And that became really clear in regards to emerging technologies and also AI. Our conversation is very important. We want to be involved within the involvement of artificial intelligence or emerging technologies. So the methodologies. It was no real hard question in the regard that kaupapa Māori theory was going to underpin our conversations. So really beneficial having Graham and Linda Smith being our next door neighbours. So I'm just a little bit worried that plagiarism might have come out in my PhD and Graham Smith's words were coming out of my waha. But I think that's another thing, strategically placing yourselves in front and around and behind those who have gone before us. So having Graham and Linda and Cheryl Smith all in Whanganui, blessed. We are just so blessed to be able to tap into that resource. So kaupapa Māori theory. We also decided that we wanted to break the traditions of a single theory that we should be writing about, as in our Pākehā world. And I discovered the word eclectic. Eclectic. It was sort of like when I go to the lolly shop, I'll have one of those and one of those and one of those. And you can also see, for those of you who've had dinner with me for the last 2 nights, that ice cream was pretty special as well in my life. And it still is, because I have ice cream for entree every meal. So the eclecticness of how we do things is really quite important. So sitting within kaupapa Māori theory, we used an eclectic array of how we gathered the information. Firstly, ko au anō. I have an experience of working within technology, so I could dig back into the pit of the knowledge and the understanding and the experiences that took place in my life within IT. So that was one of the methods in which I was able to reflect back and create thoughts and stories and streams of what we would use later on in our conversations. We also had the idea that we would have a look at what supported and what didn't support us within literature. Te pautama whetū was the theory in which we utilised a Māori mechanism of referencing literature. And Jeremy Hatape was the one that I just want to acknowledge on there. So utilising Māori methodologies, an eclectic array of. We then used wānanga to ensure that our voices were going to be heard from me, my whānau, and we were able to break up those wānanga into individual specialisations, group family meetings, larger group family meetings, all under the methodology of wānanga. Man, I haven't followed any protocols in getting permission for photos. Sorry, Kay Marie. Engari, I think it was in my letter I sent to you of consent to being part and parcel of the project, that any imagery, any voice that you might have, I promise I won't bastardise it. But so important in regards to who could reflect on the possible use of IT and the possible use of artificial intelligence. So I created with my family conversations of what we felt were important to us within the discovery of where we would like to be placed, our voices to be placed within that world of artificial intelligence. But we also wanted and required voices of experts within the technical field. I think 34 people we spoke with to come up with a set of suggestions that if we were able to enshrine these suggestions into the machinery, into the mechanics of creating the algorithm, then when that's working on the data space, we're more likely to support the well-being of Māori. So a big mihi out to my research whānau. So, after all the research was done with conversations, it all got put into audio, and I wish I knew the trans, what do you call it, when you take the kōrero into the typing? Shit, what a job and a half. If you can find somebody to do the transcriptions for you, yeah, do it. Find some money and do it that way. However, me doing the first sort of 10 transcriptions, it's really true. You get your head, or I got my head, into the kōrero that was taking place. So it's another way of becoming part of the conversation. But geez, if you've got 23 odd transcriptions, it gets a little bit, yeah, we'll be calling on you for the next times in our transcriptions. So what we did was a lot of aggregation to come up with our nukutere model of what values we thought as a family, and this is our biggest difference, as a family, as Raikete and Patu Moana Omo, what we felt as a family would be specific tikanga, mātauranga, that if enshrined into anything, if it's enshrined into us baking rewana, if it's enshrined into us going into a cricket meet, if it's enshrined into us building a motor car. It just so happened that my world of IT was an area in which I wanted to focus on. But I really do need to emphasise that the tikanga that we discovered, or we sort of knew, could be put in any circumstance of creating. And in this stage, we're putting forward the fact that if we can enshrine these tikanga into an algorithm, a Māori artificial intelligence, mixing that now with data, and we know a lot about data, mixing it with that data, we then would have a better chance of creating well-being for us as a whānau. So the nukutere model sort of looks like the hinaki that my grandparents used to make, but it got pointed out early in the conversation that the hinaki is used for trapping things in. However, the model of flowing water through the hinaki was the model that I was looking for. It was the metaphor that I was looking for on how we eventuated to these 5 kupu around tikanga. So the aggregation of data. When I finished all the conversations, we brought all that data together and we talked about it. I went back to the people who were part and parcel of the whānau. And again, I look out into the audience and there's faces that were part of my research whānau. And I went back and talked to them. Is this what you really wanted to say? I've paraphrased this and taken it away. What should I put back in? So the aggregation of what we were saying to a specific kaupapa was very important. Backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. And I think there was about 9 times that I went back to many of my whānau. There was times I couldn't catch up with Te Taka, so we had to sit down for a good hour to have a talk. But those conversations are really important to be able to ensure that the voice of the person who you are talking about or talking with was saying, keeping their conversation tika and pono. So the first thing that we came up with is we came up with 21 transformative elements. And those 21 elements range from the practices and the rituals that take place at the beginning of a ritual, the way in which we talk to each other and how respect, whether we're having an angry conversation, there still needs to be respect. So 21 elements were identified of what we felt were some of the things identifying the tikanga mātauranga in question of, can it make any difference as an AI tool? And to make it easier, the aggregation continued, and we came up with 5 transformative factors. And I could probably get hold of Ben's slideshow from this morning and put it up, because we all know it, they're pretty much the same. Right? We've got to have whakapono, we've got to have integrity, we've got to have control of what is happening to whatever we're doing. So if our IT artifact has that ability to have that autonomy, then that's a step closer for us to good well-being for my family. And it's collective autonomy, and we've heard about that in regards to many of the conversations that have gone over in the last 72 hours. We must have a vision. Moi moi a. We have a vision of where we want to go to. And again, I think that was Dion. I think it was in Dion's slide. What is the collective vision? So, yes, we were talking about IT and AI, but all those other things, what are the values that we as a whānau, as raikete and patumoana omo, what would be one of the values that we would have if we were in the discussion, in the creation of something? Comfort. We have to feel comfortable. We really have to feel comfortable around, is this something that we want to do? Ahurutanga. Making sure that the comfort, affirmation of mātauranga, affirmation of tikanga is essential for cultural well-being. Now and again, talking to the converted, these are the things that we take in all our families, but this specific conversation and journey was made by my family, and specifically looking at tikanga and mātauranga Māori that could benefit us if we're involved in the creation of an artificial intelligence. Whakawhanaungatanga, that sits on everybody's list of relationships. And koha, wanting, that might be the wrong word, change. If that comes along, how do we become part of that change? And one of the things that we discovered very, very heavily is that the knowledge from we as a family around artificial intelligence was pretty limited. So we had to educate ourselves about what that is, what our family thought it was about, and that's where we got all the stories from our aunties, our nannies that were still alive. Those conversations were just so important of how we straddle the divide of change. And if I go back to that first picture, the only one that enjoys change is my moko and a dirty nappy. That's so important. Vivacious and successful experience are needed for us because we've been, and I'm going to steal a word that I think Dion, we've been in so much shit about all the colonialisation that has come on. So we need to have vivacious and stimulus and successful experiences if something is going to work for us. Okay, again, talking to the converted, we know these tikanga, but our stance is profound that we would like to put these, enshrine these tikanga into an artificial intelligence. That would therefore give us better chance when it's working with data to create a well-being. The difference again with this conversation, for my whānau. For my whānau. Real quickly going through in regards to the contributions in which my whānau have now made to the world and the conventions of IT and artificial intelligence. We've created this model that can harness AI technologies and support whānau connectivity. So the Nukutere model is a model of how we traversed through the aggregation of so much data to refine down to the 5 transformative practices that we felt would impact the development of artificial intelligence. The enhancement of whakawhanaungatanga. Tell you now, my first cousins, there's 21 of us, and the 21 of us all didn't meet at the same time, but over the period of time of the thesis, I spoke to them. And in many cases, it was for the first time for a long time. My cousin Tiwai, who lives over in Germany, I hadn't seen him for years, let alone spoken to him. So being able to utilise the Zoom technologies, we were able to enhance the whakawhanaungatanga that was inside our family. Kaupapa Māori theory, just adding to the kōrero that again, Graham Smith was instrumental in providing for us in our stance within that theorisation. Grounded research, adding to the literature. I tell you, for those who are thinking about getting into that PhD happening, the navigation of what the expectations are of your institute is just so important to try and get a handle on. The paperwork that's required to put yourself in a position to be a PhD or a master's candidate is huge. And it was just on Friday that I was able to, I hope, finish and finalise the final documentation of ensuring that our PhD is now sitting in the Research Commons. Because I shifted back down to Massey, it's now sitting in there. However, I sent an email off to Waikato saying I started here. Can I put my research into the Research Commons of Waikato? I know their immediate answer, but we'll certainly push that one. So it sits in the places of existence that I was part of. 1977. Teachers College. Whoa. You know those ducks that were upside down in the lake yesterday and all that rain? Yeah, me and my mates had our ass in that pool too, long time ago. So I go back to Waikato. I come back here as my tūranga waiwai of tertiary. And again, I just thank Tainui Waikato being on the whenua here. But when Hemi Whanga shifted down to be head of Te Pūtahi Ātoi at Massey, I kei te haere tonu, and plus I live in Wanganui, so it's a lot closer. So contribution to that scarce pool of literature. And it also created a picture of my mate who was up here this morning had trouble with that word that I can't say either, but the decolonialization, I have trouble with that word too. We created a model in which we were able to address the systems that we're in because of the Western world. Future work, and it's been so good in regards to just talking with people in regards to the work that my whānau and I did. Disseminations of our whānau. Being able to sit with people who are going to create podcasts that might provide an opportunity for my whānau and I to disseminate the information we've had. Because an idea dead in the head, or the idea of a thesis sitting in a research commons that just sits there gathering dust, it needs to be disseminated and shared so that we can make a difference in the space for us in the world of artificial intelligence. Collaboration with other whānau, and I've got really blessed to be part of the Abundance Intelligence Project as a postdoc, being able to talk to Indigenous people around the world on their journeys through the world of artificial intelligence. Replication of the Nukutere model. Now it's for our iwi, it's for our hapū, however, it's a model that we created as a family. So being able to replicate that model for other families, which would then impact hapū, which would then impact iwi. Research in other communities or with other communities. Collaborations, always looking for collaborations. We're so siloed in this Western world that we need to break down those chains, climb over the barriers of that silo, and work interdisciplinary. So good. Amber was with you at breakfast this morning, and I'm talking about the work that you are doing in regards to virtual reality, to mixed reality, augmented reality. There is a gap between the academic world and what's happening in the real world. And we need to be a part, and this is happening here, because we're able to talk to our Māori colleagues in practice and in academic. Now, Cousin Lee, I haven't seen you forever, but our conversations are happening so that our Harawera whānau and our Hudson whānau, we're together back on the awa in Whakatane. So real important. And the one thing that it's going to lead me now, and again, it goes back to Graham's work about the veracity of the intervention. The veracity of the intervention, which was outside the scope of this conversation, but future work. The work needs to be done by Indigenous people, with Indigenous people, for Indigenous people. So building capacity is just so important so that we do have Indigenous people. We do have Māori people working in both the social aspects of this beautiful world, this wondrous world of artificial intelligence, and going forward for the betterment of our own personal families. So with that, I think the last final thing that I sort of want to put out there is the fact that, I've just seen a spelling mistake. Sorry, bro. I lost my track, what I was going to say after all that. To hell with it. Can't have been that important. Whānau e tēnei. Choice to be up here. Ngā mihi.
What I want to talk about in the next hour or so is something that I've been involved with. There was some conversations last night about how technology, how AI is encroaching on all that we do. And I think it's easy to get a little bit, I don't know if depressed is the word, but it's easy to get unsure about how this big tide is not going to wash us all over. My kind of thinking is that people have certain passions and interests, and whatever your passion and interest is, that's where you should concentrate on. So we heard a lot of talk yesterday about certain areas regarding intellectual property rights and different models. And for those people where that's their passion, then that's the work they should be doing. In terms of our reo, the loss of our reo, certain people are really good at being teachers, they should teach our reo. Certain people are good at being lawyers, they should investigate the laws. People are good at working with government, they should work with government. My passion is in one particular area called large language models. And what I want to do is have a quick talk about what large language models are about, but then I want to fire two up actually, and we'll just have a little bit of a conversation with this model, and this is all publicly available right now, and I want you to be aware of some of the responses that it's giving. And then I want to talk about the issues, the problems we have with this, and some solutions that we're looking at. What's the point in presenting a problem if you're not going to address it with some solutions? So that's where we're going to go. Hopefully it's not going to take too long, because I'd rather be having lunch than standing up here talking to everybody. All right, let's just... Okay. So the original intention was that I was going to start off this morning and I was going to talk about the Tikanga in Technology program has got 3 specific areas, RA1, RA2, RA3. RA1 ably led by Tahu Kukutai, tēnā koe tau. RA2 ably led by Māori Hudson. And I was involved with RA3, shall we say. What's been good about today and yesterday specifically is to be able to get a little bit of taste about the different areas of research the different groups have been doing. And it's clear to see the passion they have, and it's clear as well to see the importance that each particular area has. So I think we've been quite fortunate in this TINT project, and that we've been able to enable some research, some work into some really important areas concerning Māori data sovereignty. We had a member of our team who passed away a couple of years ago. He's still a big part of our project. He's a really good friend of mine. Anō reira, tēnei te mihi atu kia koe, Paula, o tira kia koutou katoa, mea ki kua whakawhiti atu ki tērā o ngā ao, hoi no kei reira tonu koutou I ari ana I a tātou. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, o tira tēnā tātou. Kia ora, Paula. This is a part of the research team that was in RA3. Again, Paul Brown can't be here. Got to watch out for that chicken wire when you're walking around. Some of the team have presented already. Some of the team are still to present. Natalie gave me that list. I'm not sure if everybody is completely on there, but fingers crossed. It would be difficult to highlight each particular topic because there's so many topics that this particular section of the TINT project has been working on. Anō reira, tēnei au e mihi atu ana ki tēnei o ngā tīma, mo te pai, mo te kaha ki te whai atu I rangatu mo kaupapa. Anō reira, tēnā koutou. Okay, so what I want to talk about is large language models and artificial intelligence. Here's a question. How many people have used an AI? How many people have used ChatGPT? Okay, most of the room. Okay, so I don't really have to tell you what they are because you're using them already. This is a graph showing how quickly they became prominent. This is to get 1 million users. Netflix took 3.5 years. All of these other apps took this long. ChatGPT, once it came onto the scene, took 5 days to reach 1 million users. So this is a technology that has very quickly come into our lives. This is a graph about how AI technologies have rapidly improved. And in there are the different types of things that AI technology is doing. Speech recognition, I think, is one that Petera mentioned. The speech recognition that's happening now is streets and streets ahead of where it was just a few years ago. And these technologies have crossed the human performance barrier, i.e. they can do better, they are more accurate than a human sitting down and doing them. Okay, so these technologies have been coming in, we've been using them. They bring with them the phrase that UNESCO used a couple of years ago was controversies. Here's another one of those words. Controversies. So here's some controversies that UNESCO has noted with using general AI for education. So it has the potential to worsen digital poverty. The technology is outpacing regulations that can be used to control it. Content is being used out of consent, well, without consent and out of context. Models are becoming unexplainable. And as we heard earlier this morning, if we can't explain how our models work, how can we correct them? How can we remove the bias? Our internet is getting polluted with AI-generated content. The people who are using these technologies are starting to lose a connection with the real world. What was the term Peter Lucas Jones used last night? Digital captives. Our children are being captive in this world and not actually being able to go outside and smell the flowers. The diversity of opinions and further marginalisation is happening, and then there's the option for generating deepfakes. So here's a list of issues that we're having. What I want to do is I want to specifically look at how these are happening for our reo. Okay, so most people in this room have been using an AI like ChatGPT. How many people, here's a question, how many people have been using it for te reo Māori? Oh, that's interesting, only a few. We had a group of school children from, I think, 5 schools in the Tai Tokerau come over to us at the university. They did a university tour about 9 months ago, mid last year, and I asked these children how many of them were using this technology for te reo Māori. Well, first I asked them how many were using AI, and most of them put their hand up. And then I said, how many were using it in te reo Māori? And all the children looked at their school teachers. And they looked at their school teachers because they didn't want their teacher to know that when it comes to doing their Māori homework, this is where they were going. Right? Which is kind of concerning. In terms of AI that speak real Māori, These are some of the main ones that are doing it at the moment: ChatGPT, Claude, Meta, Gemini, Mistral. There's a bunch of other tools that you can get off Hugging Face, and they work reasonably well. What I want to do now is show an example. So this is a website that we put together, and this morning I came in and I said, Alex, I don't want to just show my slides. I want you to be able to connect my laptop and run something off my laptop. And Alex, in his cleverness, has enabled me to do that. So this is a website I've got running here. I'm missing a meeting this morning for the AI. It's on in 1 minute. I'm not going to make that meeting, sorry guys. Let's just get out of there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to this tool, and it's going to talk back to me in Te Reo Māori. That's the plan. Where is my cursor? Here it is. Tēnā koe e pē whiana koe. Okay, so a couple of things are happening. 3 important things, really. The first thing, actually we'll wait.
Tēnā koe e hoa, kaore au I te pēwhi. He hangarau roro hiko noa I hoa hau. Kaore o ku kare a roto pi nei I te tangata. He o ia no, e ngā kaumuia nā hau ki te āwhina I a koe, me te whakautu I o pātai I roto I te reo Māori. Aha kua kaore anō kia tino matatau ahau ki tēnei reo. Kei te pēhea koe I tēnei rā.
Okay, so first thing, does anybody recognise that voice? So, me mihi kātika ki te hiku media mo itihi o ngā technology nei. So I said there was 3 things happening. So the first thing is it's taking my voice and it's translating spoken voice into written voice. The second thing is it's taking the text that it's transcribed, it's firing it off to an AI, it's getting an answer, and then it's shooting that answer back. And then the third thing is it's speaking that text. So what's written here is the text that it was asked to speak. The technology to translate, to transcribe Te Reo Māori, the best technology in the world is from Te Hiku Media. So to create this tool, I got in touch with Peter Lucas-Jones and Keone and said, guys, I want to create this tool, speak to the computer, get it to speak back. Can I use your API to do the transcription? And they said yes. And then I said, also to speak back, can I use your speech synthesis tool? And they also said yes. And then they said to me, and this is a really important question, which AI are you asking the questions to? And I said, well, I was thinking maybe ChatGPT. And they said, we actually don't like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is built by OpenAI. They have no morals. They steal our data. They have unscrupulous work practices. We would prefer you use a different AI. So I was like, sure. So this AI is called Claude. So Claude is built, still out of California. It's built by another company called Anthropic. The leaders of the company of Anthropic used to work at OpenAI, and they were so, we'll say, disappointed. They were so disappointed with some of the practices that OpenAI were doing that they left and formed their own company. They formed their own company, they called it Anthropic. They produced a large language model that works for many languages, including Te Reo Māori, and they called it Claude. So, ki tā Claude. So this is Claude's response. This isn't actually Peter Lucas-Jones saying this, it's his voice. This isn't a recording, pre-recorded that's being played. This is saying his voice on the fly. Okay, this is happening on the fly, right? Here's another question. We'll ask it another question. Move my cursor. He aha te kai a te rangatira. So you can see this is the text that it's captured. He aha te kai a te rangatira. E hanga whakaro ana Claude. So Claude's having a think about a response.
Ko te kai a te rangatira ko te kōrero, he whakatau ki Māori tēnei e whakaatu ana i te hiranga o te kōrero. Te whakawhiti-whiti whakaro, mi te maa tauranga ki te ao Māori. Hi tā te Māori titiro he mea nui te kōrero e whāngai i te wairua, te hinengaro, me te mana o te tangata. Mā te kōrero, ka taia i te rangatira te ārahi i tanaiwi, te whakatau.
I have much love for Peter Lucas Jones, but sometimes he talks too much. This isn't being recorded, right? Kia iti iho tō whakautu.
He whakatau ki Māori e mea ana ko te kōrero te kai a te rangatira. Ki te ao Māori, he mea nui te kōrero hei whāngai i te wairua, te hinengaro, me te mana o te tangata.
So I've instructed it in Te Reo Māori to shorten your responses, and it's responded with a shorter response. Okay, so again, 3 steps. Capture my reo, transcribe it. It doesn't translate it to English, answer in English, and then translate it back. It's thinking in Te Reo Māori, right? AI Reo Māori. Okay, let's ask it something else. Ko wai mā ngā iwi o Pirongia? So this is a little bit safe for me because I'm from Pirongia. I live there actually.
Ko Ngāti Pakura, Ngāti Mahanga, Ngāti Kairo, me Ngāti Puhiawe ngā iwi matua e noho ana ki te rohe o Pirongia. Kei te raki o kirikiri roa Pirongia. He maunga whakahirahira ki e nei iwi.
Kei tāwha tikatera whaia? Okay. Yes, I know kua autina. So this is kind of accurate. The main iwi of Pirongia Mountain are Ngāti Apakura, Ngāti Mahanga, a little bit around Whatawhata, but still a significant part of Pirongia Mountain. Ngāti Hikairo, who are currently in negotiations with trying to establish their own mana status. Ngāti Puhiawe is, yes, you could argue, that's a little bit of an unusual one. I probably would have mentioned Ngāti Maniapoto as well, but it's still not a bad answer. I roto tonu i te reo Māori. Ho mai e tehi kōrero mō te maunga o Pirongia. So it hasn't captured correctly what I've asked, but let's see what it responds with.
Ko Pirongia tētahi maunga whakahirahira ki te taha haua auru o kirikiriro. He maunga tapu, he maunga tino whakahirahira ki ngā iwi o taua takiwā. Pērā ia Ngāti Apakura, Ngāti Mahanga, Ngāti Hikairo me Ngāti Puhiawe. I te wā o mua, he pātū watawata kei runga i te tihi o Pirongia. He wāhi haumaru mō ngā iwi i ngā wā o te pakanga. He wāhi hoki a Pirongia mō ngā tikanga tapu.
This is really good. These answers, I roto i te reo Māori, are very good answers. Has anybody got a question they'd like to ask? Yes?
Not a question, but how do you use this?
Sorry? How do you use it?
I talk to them all the time.
You do use it, yeah. Tēnā koe. So that's kind of been my experience as well. If you look at the whakatakotoa of the reo, even the macrons, they're all in the right place. This is a very correct display of te reo Māori. The concern is we don't control this. Māori doesn't control this. The control of Claude is through a company called Anthropic, who reside in the United States, right? They do not care about Māori people. Well, probably haven't even heard of Māori people, to be honest. Māori data sovereignty over our reo has been lost through this kind of technology. Okay, so that's an issue. That's a real issue for us. Before I explain all of the reasons why this is bad, like, it's bad because it's so good. If it was to quote Dion, if it was a shitty reo, sweet as. But it's such a good reo, it's seductive, our children are using it. And the concern is, they're not just using it for reo, but they're using it for tikanga. Right? A long, long time ago, I heard somebody say that the colonisation of data was the final colonisation. And I remember at the time thinking, how can you colonise data? This is an example of data colonisation. This does not give a Ngāti Apakura response. This does not give a Ngāti Mahanga response. It gives an overall response to everybody. We're concerned about our kōrero in the Tai Tokerau. If our children in the Tai Tokerau are using this to ask questions, to get history, then our own kōrero isn't being displayed to them. They're getting this one generic response. And one of the beauty of being Māori is that we have our own tino rangatiratanga. We have our own aspects. We have lots of discussions around Parongia Mountain, but it's okay for Ngāti Mahanga to have their perspectives. It's okay for Ngāti Apakura to have their perspectives. It's okay for Ngāti Hikairo to have their perspectives. That's tino rangatiratanga in action. This takes that away and says, here's the perspective. Colonisation. What I want to do is before, how are we going for, oh my God. I just want to show you this other website. This is kind of more, just really showing you a little bit about the technology. So the previous website specifically for Te Reo Māori only works for Te Reo Māori. This website is a similar thing. It works for many languages. What I want to do is show you that. Oh, where's my cursor? What's a question? What is the Treaty of Waitangi? Answer in French, German, and Japanese. Okay, so a similar set of tools we put together. There's a transcription. It's taking what I asked. Actually, let's try and show that. Show text. Well, here's the answer. So here's the text before, and now it's going to start speaking it.
Le traité de Waitangi est un accord signé en 1840 entre la couronne britannique et plusieurs chefs maoris de Nouvelle-Zélande. Ce traité est considéré comme le document fondateur de la Nouvelle-Zélande en tant que nation. Il établit les droits et les devoirs des deux parties et est souvent au centre des discussions sur les droits des Maoris et les relations entre les Maoris et le gouvernement néo-zélandais. German. Der Vertrag von Waitangi ist ein Abkommen, das 1840 zwischen der britischen Krone und mehreren Maori-Häuptlingen Neuseelands unterzeichnet wurde. Dieser Vertrag wird als Gründungsdokument Neuseelands als Nation angesehen. Er legt die Rechte und Pflichten beider Parteien fest und steht oft im Mittelpunkt von Diskussionen über die Rechte der Maori und die Beziehungen zwischen den Maori und der neuseeländischen Regierung.
Does anybody speak French? German? Is that kind of okay? Terrible voice? Anybody speak Japanese?
Japanese Waitangi 条約は1840年にイギリス王室とニュージーランドの複数のマオリ族の首長との間で締結された協定です。この条約は
I want to do a couple of things. It's an important computer science thing. I'm not sure if you're not a computer scientist. Whakautu mai I te reo Māori.
Ko te tiriti o Waitangi, he wakaitanga I hainatia I te tau 1840.
Okay, so a couple of things. The first thing, you quickly notice the voice, right? That's a horrible voice. That's no Peter Lucas Jones speaking. Which is why we asked him if we could have his voice when we were playing around with these tools. The Hikumiri have done a lot of work, and one of the things, I'm not sure if you heard it last night, but one of the things is they're really particular that it must be accurate. Accurate recording, accurate pronunciation. Obviously, overseas AI companies aren't concerned about that accuracy, and our reo will suffer because of it. Nō reira me mihi kia rātou kia tika mo tērā o ngā taumata kia eke ai. The second thing is, without asking, it's translated the interface into te reo Māori. So one of the things we built in this tool was to not just speak in te reo Māori, but to be able to change its characteristics. If I wanted to, and I'm not going to worry about it now, but I could tell it, change the interface colour to red, and it would do it itself. So what we've got is an AI tool that's not just speaking to us, but it's able to change its environment based on what we're saying. Okay, so 2 tools I wanted to explain. I think this tool for me is the most important because it's the most concerning. What I'm going to do now is now that the demonstration is over, I'm going to ask Alex to go back to my slides and I want to talk about some of the implications of what's happening. And it's not what's the future. This is what's happening today. Okay, so demonstration of this particular tool, AI working in te reo Māori, it actually works really well, both from a contextual, synthetic, linguistic perspective, but also the tikanga of what it's saying appears to be quite good too, which is seductive, especially to our younger generation. And then this was this other tool, multilingual, but you can actually change the interface just by talking to it. Okay, so running quickly, the seductions with this tool, it's fast, it's cheap, it's free, can't get any cheaper than that. Responses are instant, load it on your phone, it's talking to you straight away. It's readily available. In certain domains, it works really well. It's a large language model, so it doesn't really know what it's saying. If it's not working well, you can change the way you're asking your question, prompt engineering that's called, and it's going to respond better. Large international computer companies are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on this technology. This is where it's at right now. 3 months it's going to be better. 3 months from now it's going to be even better. It has the ability to utilize other AIs and other APIs, which is another concern, but I want to talk about that another day. The antithesis, the exact opposite of Māori data sovereignty. We have no sovereignty over this data. We have no control over what it says. That's taken out of our hands. Okay? It's taken out of our hands and somebody's making money off it. So how can they be making money if it's free? There's two ways. There's ads with it, or if you want the fastest, latest version, start subscribing. Okay, so and overseas companies are profiting off our data, Māori data. Every time we use it, it's listening to what we're asking it, it's building its models, so we're kind of feeding it. Māori language shift. In terms of te reo Māori, over the last couple of centuries, there's been some important things that have shifted our language. One of them, of course, was colonisation, the arrival of the Pākehā, the missionaries, their work. There was a series of books called Te Rangatahi that was taught in all the schools that had a particular Whānau, Apanui, meter to them. And then this as well. Māori language nuances are lost. So we've spoken about nuances over the last couple of days. The response that this tool's given is an overall general response. If we want our children to be learning the nuances of our particular iwi, of our particular hapū, they won't be learning it from here. Okay. This is something that Te Huku Media realised a couple of years ago. They wrote this paper. It was mentioned yesterday. It's a good read if you want to have a read about some of the things we should be concerned about. Has anybody ever heard of this? DeepSeek? To me, it kind of sounds like an ad on TV for getting a job. So DeepSeek is an AI that was recently produced maybe just a month ago, and it's now taken over OpenAI. It's now taken over ChatGPT as the most used AI. It came out of China. They said when they produced it, it used 20 to 50% less computing power to produce it. So there's been a rhetoric coming out of the States about, well, to build these big models, you need this massive amount of computing power. And you kind of do, but these guys built one with a lot less. And they did something different in that they've made their code open source. So anybody can take their code, look at it, and then build models off it. The Australian government, New Zealand government are concerned because if people start using this at work, it's a Chinese-based company, then everything they put in there will go back to the Chinese government. So there's some security concerns. But in terms of the AI world, it's quite important that it's open source because if it's open source, then we get to see the code, we get to use the code, manipulate the code. OpenAI, interestingly, ChatGPT, the owners of ChatGPT are called OpenAI. It's not open. It's a closed AI. What a ironic name they have for their company, because that's a lie. Okay. Actually, I haven't tried DeepSeek for te reo Māori. That'd be an interesting thing to do. Okay, we're concerned. Our data is being used by these other companies, pretty much sold back to us. It's doing a good job. Our children are using it. How what's the solution? Because the solution isn't to tell our children not to use these tools. Because if you tell them not to use it, they're just going to use it more. For me, the solution is, let's build a better one. Here's what Claude is doing right now. Let's build our own one. Let's build a better one. And rather than tell our children, don't use this, make it so good that they'll want to use it. Okay? So that's the plan. Let's go and build our own real Māori large language model. Okay, so if we want to do that, if we want to build a large language model, a type of an artificial intelligence, we just need three things, really. We need the data, we need some algorithms, and we need some computing power. That's all it is. Where are we going? Where did ChatGPT get most of its data? It got most of it from the internet. This is how much, this graphic is 2 years old. This is how much data is being loaded on the internet every minute. So we've got 241 million emails, 18 million text messages, 2.4 million Google searches, almost 700,000 videos being watched, 350,000 tweets, and so on. Where's Facebook? 11,000 Facebook accounts are being removed every minute. There's a massive amount of data on the internet. Without a doubt, having a look at the engineering, the reason it can speak Te Reo Māori so well is because there's so much Te Reo Māori in social media. Right? We get to use Facebook for free, but then what happens is, if we're using it in Te Reo Māori, we use it for free, but the large language models get a copy of what we're saying, which is why people are kind of getting off Facebook. Okay, there's a source of data. That's the source of data that they used. This is just a graphic saying, in terms of building one of the large language models, 67% come from this thing called the common core of the web. Another 15% come from this database called C4, which is basically another crawl that's been contextualized. So, to back up my point, where are they getting their data from? They're getting it from the web, they're getting it from social media. This is a graph showing how much data points are used to train AI models. So, how can I explain this? When a model makes a decision, when a model is being built, it looks at all different data points, compares them, and then starts making decisions. 1 terabyte of data points is a massive amount. That's not something I can easily replace in the computer science department here. This is the amount of compute, so how powerful, how many CPUs you have to use. And again, we're looking at 1 terabyte of training floating point operations. Again, this is a little bit more computer grunt than we've got in our computer science department. It would be very difficult for us to create our own model like ChatGPT. These are the different steps that you need to take to create this kind of model. You've got to do a bunch of pre-training, some early language modelling, you get your base model, and then you do some fine-tuning, some reward modelling, some reinforcement learning. There's a whole bunch of steps. It's actually not that easy to build one from scratch. So rather than build one from scratch, why don't we just repurpose one? So this is what we've been looking at doing. This is some work we started doing mid last year. We want to build a real Māori generative AI. So similar to that example I showed you, Māori text is being generated. It's not being just repeated. It's actually being generated on the fly. We don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible for us to build a real Māori one. We should be looking at an iwi specific model. I'm from a lot of places, but the one that I want to specifically look at is a Waikato generative Māori AI, or probably it might be a bit easier given some of the politics at Waikato Tainu to build a Maniapoto generative Māori AI. So these are some of the things I've been looking at. We really want it to be sovereign. To be sovereign, we want to build it ourselves, have it stored on our own lands, have control over the data that it uses, that it thinks from, and to be able to control who accesses it. So self-contained locally, Maniapoto supported data, Maniapoto supported proofing and stoppages. So that's where we're going. We've done some initial testing. There's a type of software that you can use, a type of operating system called the Docker containers operating system, where you can contain all of the different programs that you need to be running this. We've looked at a bunch of different data sets, some public multilingual data sets, which are actually, again, to quote Dion, pretty shit for te reo Māori. We've looked at some public Māori data sets. Wikipedia has got a version in te reo Māori. We did a crawl over the internet to see what we could find for te reo Māori documents. There's actually a lot of iwi that place a lot of reo Māori documents online, but there was a lot from the government. We are uncomfortable to use other iwi's language data, even though they've publicly placed it online, and this is kind of where Tikanga Māori kind of clash with computer science reasoning, because computer science reasoning says if it's on the line, it's free for everyone. We're uncomfortable with using iwi language data that's placed online, but if the government's placed it online, we figure, well, that's okay. Ideally, we should have an agreement with the government to say we're going to use your data to build our language models, and perhaps we'll go down that track one day. But I don't know about this government. Jesus. Apologies. Okay. It was great to hear Petera talking about placing his thesis in the Research Commons. There's quite a few real Māori theses that are placed in there that are a good source of Māori language data, but we need to get permission from those. We also use some automatic translation services to translate some English text into Māori to see what effect they had on our models. And then I've got a bunch of Māori data that I've collected myself. So we took all of this data and then we looked at different open source AI models that are out there. And there's kind of like 5 types: casual language modeling, translation models, prompt response models, text classification models, and transcription models. So the ones we're most interested in is the prompt response, because that's when you can talk to it and it can get a response. But we had a bit of a play with all of these different models. I've got about 50 pages of examples of what came out of all of these models. Most of it is very bad. It's like terrible. It's worse than that word that Dion uses. Towards the end, we found that some retrieval augmented generated models seem to be working reasonably well. So we tried all of these bunches, and then towards the end, we were settling with this Phi-3 model. We could give it a source of Māori language text, question it on that text, and it kind of responded back to us, okay. We still need to do a little bit of work with changing the parameters and seeing what happens, changing the data and seeing what happens. There's a couple of optimization techniques we could still use, so we haven't really got anything that we can produce to show you at the moment. But ultimately, we think that it's possible. We think that it's possible to build an iwi-specific large language model that you can converse with into Reo Māori, and it can converse back with you. Still got some work to do with some of the prompt engineering and fiddling around with the size of the model and the different context window sizes it uses, but we think it's possible. So that's a kind of area I find really exciting. There's concerns that it's working so well at the moment. I'm grateful for being a part of this TIN project because it has allowed us to have a crack at this to see if it's possible. I definitely think it's possible. Watch this space over the next couple of years. Next couple of months, maybe. Did I have anything more? Okay, final slide. This is where I think we're going. This is what we want to do. We want to create sovereign AI by iwi, not for iwi. We want each individual iwi to be thinking, okay, I want to build my own large language model. Those models must be located on iwi land. So then clowns like Donald Trump can't get their hands on it. We need to upskill our own people because it's our own people that should be building these models. It was really great to hear that comment earlier in the day where we do Māori data sovereignty by holding on to our own data. Excellent. Because now let's work with our own people to use our own data to create our own large language models. And as much as I love Peter Lucas Jones, it'd be great to have a maniapoto sounding voice. We've actually started some work on that. We've actually recorded 11 hours of a maniapoto woman speaking, because it'd be good to have a woman's voice as well. So we've actually recorded 11 hours of her speaking, and now we're going through checking what is transcribed matches exactly what she says. We've got about 8,500 separate recordings, and it's taken us a lot longer than I hoped to tick through those. But hopefully within a month or so, we'll have Peter Lucas Jones, or if you want a maniapoto voice, a woman's voice, and then here's an option. And so the voice will say whatever we tell it. We want the AI to generate content specific to our iwi. Kia nei koera, te whakatinanatanga o te tino rangatiratanga I roto I te ao AI. Kia ora tātou. Okay, we've got 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions, I think if you can stand up, because I think the guys at the back need to know which mic to turn on. So if you can stand up, please.
Kia ora tā Taka. That's amazing. My experience isn't in AI, and that's actually been quite startling to see. I had a question in terms of the accuracy of Claude. If, let's say we get like a hope of language learners who are using Claude to sort of learn and improve their own reo, would that impact the accuracy, or is there protections in place that would stop that from learning basically the bad reo from the learners?
It's a difficult one to answer because even though AI companies say they're listening and are recording what everybody does, it's really difficult to see how much it does impact. I think it has the potential to impact. I actually think it would have that potential to improve, because even though they're responding with a not very good reo, it's only a small response. And it's really the more use it gets, the better it becomes. I don't really want to say this, but the more Māori language users that are using Claude, the better it's going to be. But then by using it, we're ceding our sovereignty over it, really.
Sure, thank you.
Tēnā koe Tānia Mac, tā tōku ingo, no nā tihauru ne tawa tipua, ko taku pātai ki a koe is about the accuracy of Claude. Mea mai koe he tino accurate, or that's very good Māori. So there is a degree of he kei roto, because I'm a second language learner, and even I could see just in that response there was mea, like ki tā te Māori titiro. He whakaro English tēnā as the Māori perspective is, whereas we would just say ki tā te Māori. So I wanted to wonder, can we comfortably say there's a good, say 40-25% of he kei roto?
It would be difficult to accurately say what percentage, because it will respond differently. If you ask it a general question that it has lots of information upon, the answer will be quite highly accurate. But if you were to ask, if you were to ask it about the Māori Queen, she's only just become the Queen. They won't have much data about that. Its response won't be so accurate. So the accuracy of the content is depending on what you're asking, but in terms of the syntax and the layout, that's really, really good. And if you were a learner of Te Reo Māori, if you had a very basic understanding of Te Reo Māori and you wanted to improve it, this probably would be a good way, because it doesn't get upset if you don't say something correct. It doesn't get angry. It doesn't say, why do I have to keep answering that same answer over and over and over? It's here 24/7. You don't have to go to a particular place. But what's lost is the nuance. But then I guess it's when you're learning a language anyway, you're learning the language that's taught to you by that particular teacher, and then you get your language up to a level, and then you find opportunities to go home and I reira nuance ai tō reo. So I think it could certainly get you there. But ultimately where we want to be is we want our own iwi to say, if you want to learn our reo, then log on to this website. It would be good if it could challenge you in terms of who you are, and then you could respond, okay, you are this particular person from this particular hapū. Here's the reo we're going to feed you. Here's your particular stories and the examples that we're going to feed you as well. Here's the karakia, here's the whakatauki, here's the waiata. That's long term. I think that's possible. I don't think it's impossible. Nothing was ever built by a pessimist, so we've got to be optimistic. But if an overseas company can build a tool that produces our reo like this, then so can we. So to get back to your question, kind of depends on the topic, but if you're a learner of Te Reo Māori, this is good support.
Just apartheid, just in terms of nuances, is this encouraging, because I'm at home in Rotorua trying to hold up my pa by myself pretty much, and there's hardly anyone at home. So, I love technology, but if we feed everybody this stuff, and it's so accessible, kare mo te hoki mai ki te kāinga. Kare he take. So ko tērā tāku e mā harahara nui ana. Because I want my iramotu and eventually my mokowhana to come home. But tērā pēr, kare he take, mena kei konei ke, tēnei momo. Hangarua meki, or hangarau. Yeah, that's the word, eh?
So yeah, for me, we've got to think about our children and our grandchildren, really, and the world that they're growing up